tensions between Israelis and Palestinians simmered for a long time before bursting forth into the First Intifada, or uprising, where Palestinians refused to pay taxes, participated in boycotts, and threw rocks during protests and other such forms of civil disobedience. The Israelis responded with force, and over 1,000 Palestinians were killed. One major repercussion of the First Intifada was the founding of Hamas, an Islamic extremist terrorist group dedicated to Israel's downfall and gained much support in Gaza due to social welfare and infrastructure programs. In 1993 came the Oslo Accords, where Israel and Palestinians tried to resolve their differences. Many could not get resolved, but there was established a Palestinian National Authority, or PNA, and it was given authority and sovereignty over Gaza and Jericho. In 1995, the West Bank Partition Plan was signed, which made a mess of who had authority how and where in the West Bank, but did give Palestinians more autonomy in some areas. One continuity, though, is extremists on both sides propagated violence against the other and even within themselves. For example, Israeli Prime Minister who signed the Oslo Accords, Yitzhak Rabin, was assassinated by a far-right Israeli. The Second Intifada occurred when Israeli Prime Minister candidate Ariel Sharon led 1,000 armed guards to Temple Mount, where is located the most holy place in Judaism and the third most holy site in Islam. This sparked massive protests and suicide bombings, which led to the Second Intifada, which was much more destructive than the first. This had the effect of making Israelis more skeptical of Palestinian peace goals. Furthermore, Israel also began construction of a wall in 2002 around the West Bank for what they said was national defense, but was extremely controversial because not only of its exclusion of Palestinian lands, but also because the wall was built to include many Israeli settlements in the West Bank. To ease tensions, Israel withdrew settlements from Gaza in 2005. By doing this, allowed for Hamas to gain power in Gaza. In 2004, previously, Yasser Arafat had died, and the ensuing power struggle caused a civil war between Hamas and the less extreme Palestinian Authority, or Fatah, and Hamas split from the PNA in 2007. From this point on, the conflict resembles its modern shape, for the most part, with terroristic attacks and Hamas occasionally launching rockets into Israel from Gaza, which would result in a brief flare-up of conflict. Both sides claim to be responding to the provocations of the other. A notable escalation was in 2014, where Israel launched an attack on Gaza that destroyed 50,000 houses, the only power plant, 100 schools, and thousands of hospitals. The conflict flared up again recently in May 2021 as Palestinians were facing eviction in East Jerusalem. Many on both sides took to the streets to protest the other as Palestinians were protesting to stop the evictions. Violent clashes broke out between police and protesters and spread to more parts of the city. On May 7th, there was a clash at the Temple Mount where Israel then put police and officials. Hamas gave an ultimatum that if Israel did not remove the police and officials from the Temple Mount, they would fire rockets. The ultimatum expired on May 10th and Hamas launched rockets into Israel. The missiles continued and the rioting worsened with hundreds on both sides arrested. A tenuous ceasefire went into effect on May 22nd. With millions done in property damage and thousands of casualties, where does this leave the conflict and how does it look like it will proceed? This is complicated. Many Israelis have grown in some ways apathetic to the conflict, with many having had their daily lives removed from the conflict. Many Palestinians feel hopeless and trapped in a conflict with no foreseeable end and no road to gaining a sovereign state, as Israeli settlers keep encroaching on their rights and making creating a unified country extremely difficult, if not virtually impossible, not to mention the split in the Palestinian National Authority. To complicate matters further, extremists on both sides make coming to a peace agreement difficult and is compounded by the fact that some issues are extremely controversial, such as the status of Jerusalem, which both sides claim is their capital. With casualties over the course of the last 100 years numbering in the hundreds of thousands, the real question is, can both sides overcome their differences, internal and external pressures, and reach a peace settlement, or how much higher will that casualty number grow?